How do you do a wine tasting in the time of quarantine? Well, Brianne Cohen has a virtual wine tasting way to do it. And I went on her website and she has so creative ideas. I'm so excited to hear her talk about it. So welcome, Brianne.
Welcome.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks so much.
And I just want to say that I know how to taste wine, not virtually. So.
I know how to drink wine.
But please tell us about your project.
Of course, of course. So pretty much pre-pandemic in the before times, my business had two arms. I was an event producer, large scale events, mostly nonprofit, LGBT focused. As we know, that is not happening right now. You know, that side of my business, which was the majority of my business, is in hibernation. And early on in the pandemic, I mean, my first virtual wine tasting was on March 19th. When I look back, it just seems like 100 years ago. But I just had this idea. I'm home. I'm a project manager, event producer, type A. I had to put everything to the side. And I'm like, what do I do now? I am a certified sommelier, which means I spent a lot of money and a lot of time studying wine and learning how to drink professionally. And I was doing wine education classes before the pandemic. I would go into people's private homes and do wine tasting with friends and family. And then I would also get hired and do wine tastings in corporate spaces, sort of as a team building activity. So imagine, you know, getting a sales team together and maybe we do a blending workshop where everyone has to create their own blend and I get a judge on the best blend. And salespeople tend to be very competitive. So that's very fun. Or a blind tasting, for example. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit and I thought, okay, let's just see if we can do this virtually. I signed up for a Zoom account like we all did in mid-March last year, tried to figure it out. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this public tasting. I'm going to do it free. I'm going to just see what happens. And, you know, maybe my mom will sign up and a couple of my friends. I had 120 people sign up for that class. And I was like, oh gosh, what am I going to do here? And I just sort of winged it and figured it out and realized that we were all, even March of last year, we were all striving to connect in different ways, right? We were scared. We were very uncertain with what was going on in the world. So we wanted to try and connect with people. And what I learned over the next few months was that having some sort of a shared sensory experience on Zoom took it to the next level, right? We all quickly got on Zoom, whether it's for friends and family, business meetings and things like that, but it is a little flat. It's a little one-dimensional. And so you have to sort of have some kind of a shared experience. In my case, what I did is I actually sourced with wineries. I sourced wineries that were doing these little baby bottles of wine. So instead of having people having to commit and buy 3, 4, 5, 6 bottles of wine, which is expensive, number one, and also who's going to open that much wine at one time, especially if you're sheltering in place.
There are people out there that would do that.
Every time I say that, there's always a few that are like, well, that's no problem in my house, you know. But, you know, it was one of those like, okay, I wanted to mimic that tasting room experience. You know, we were all enriching ourselves at home. So, you know, what did that feel like when you walked into a wine tasting room and they gave you the glasses with all the little pours? And I was like, how are we going to do this with these big bottles? And nobody's going to open 20 glasses of wine on one night on one call. So I found the wineries that were, you know, literally repurposing their bottles. I call these little Alice in Wonderland bottles, you know. And you get these beautiful kits shipped to your house. And I, as a certified sommelier, lead the group in a wine tasting. So we get to have that shared experience. I'm teaching people and helping people become better wine tasters, help improve their wine drinking experience. My style is sort of, you know, fun, very fun, approachable. How I'm talking to y'all right now is exactly how I approach my classes. And I do mostly corporate tasting. So this is sort of broken up the monotony of Zoom happy hour every Friday with your work, right? That lasted in the beginning. That was okay. You know, week 52, we need something else.
You know, a little something different.
Yeah, you need to jazz it up. So they're doing things like cooking classes and wine tasting and trivia and things like that. And it's just really, really fun for people to be able to, like I said, that sensory experience I think is important where, you know, you can talk to, you know, I can be like, okay, Sandy, what are you getting on this Pinot Noir? And then, you know, Kenya might have some same thoughts and feelings about it. And it's just really fun to have groups, whether it's 10 people, I've done up to 300 people at one time, and we're all tasting and enjoying the wines together. So that's
wow, that sounds like so much fun. So let me ask you a business type question. Are you planning for this to be a lifestyle business, or are you thinking of trying to grow it into something bigger? And if you're trying to grow it, how are you going to do it?
Yeah, of course. I have a lot of thoughts around that. I mean, my business pre-pandemic, like I mentioned, had two arms: event production and wine education. I also write about wine. I judge in international wine competitions, things like that. So I do see this as part of a lifestyle business. And yes, the intention and idea is to grow and scale. And that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out now, because right now the service and the product is me, right? My education, my style. There's a lot of people doing what I'm doing. I'm not the only one. And so when you think about scaling, obviously you're thinking about who can, how do you replicate yourself? How do you hire people or educators who can do the same thing I do and provide the same vibe maybe that people are seeking out? Because there's a lot of people know a lot about wine. There's a lot of people that teach wine, but there's been a gap in the market, and that you have sort of the old school way of doing it and then the new school way. I'm definitely more on the new school vibe. It's not, I'm not coming on the Zoom call and intimidating people and talking about Grand Cru, Bordeaux wines that they will never taste in their lives. We're sitting there and talking about, the questions I get mostly are there actually plums and cherries in the wine? When I talk about things that I smell and taste in wine, people don't actually know. They've never felt comfortable asking those questions. So I tell them this is your wine safe space and any questions are allowed. But yes, the scaling, that's kind of actually where I'm at now, that struggle of, do I keep this business as myself, just solely doing the education, or do I hire other educators to replicate what I do? And I'm also, in a unique position, I think, like some entrepreneurs, where you have pivoted your business
during COVID. And so now my business is 100% virtual. That's what it is. So what does the reverse pivot look like? How is this business going to survive in a post-COVID world, right? When everyone's vaccinated in a year or so or whatever, and we're moving around in the world, what does that look like?
Well, certainly there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. That is really important part of the conversation. But I didn't hear the magic word. I want to sell my company.
Yeah.
Scale, that's really important. Everybody wants to scale their business and get money coming in. But if I'm an angel investor looking at you as a potential investment, I want to know. And again, this is a real challenge for all these startups, is you're just starting your business, then you got to tell us how you're going to sell it, or if you want to sell it.
I totally understand. And the unique thing in the wine industry, like I mentioned, there have been all sorts of different communicators about wine over the last, I would say, 30 years. A lot of the big people are, for example, Robert Parker is a big one, Stephen Spurrier, people, sort of household names. Like I mentioned, that's sort of the old school way. And we have millennials now that are obviously of drinking age. They've been of drinking age for a while, and things are changing.
Even pre-drinking age.
Exactly. And I do think that there is a unique space for someone or a group of people or a business to come in and be able to communicate effectively to this younger generation about a product that is typically considered, expensive, elitist, out of reach, out of touch.
With these virtual environments that you've been doing these testings in, what is the most strange thing that's happened or experience you've had doing these virtual tastings? Because it's like people and alcohol and Zoom, and just curious.
Yep. So I'll give two quick examples. I have more than once, I've had people drink right out of the bottles. Like I'm watching on the Zoom call, and it'll be a sales team and their clients. And then people are just sitting there drinking. I'm like, oh my, they're okay. The first time I saw that, the first time I saw it, it was hilarious. And then I see somebody will ask, can I just drink out of the bottle? And I said, you're not the first one. And then also, kind of like you mentioned, alcohol's involved. So there's a lot going on in the world, lots of uncertainty. So sometimes, you have when in the Q&A session and stuff towards the end, people start talking about world issues and current affairs, and that's just not a great, virtual vino is not a great place for that right now.
Politics and alcohol frequently don't mix well.
Yeah.
So,
Brianne, we had this guy on the show a little while ago, and he had this new app, instigate.ai. And basically what it allows you to do is to create a chatbot of yourself. And so you train it to reply to people the way that you would. So maybe down the road, if things stay virtual, that might be one way for you to scale. I don't know.
You could be a virtual sommelier. That's would be a real technical challenge, but what the heck,
Yep.
that might be worth something.
Yeah, people are doing it. I watch that. I see people that, oh, I'm a certified sommelier and you pay me X amount per month and you get, 5 text messages, an email, a newsletter, 3 wine suggestions, whatever it is. And in my mind, I see that. I'm like, that's not big enough because it can't always be me. I'm not going to be sitting there answering the text messages and things, right? So I do. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Brianne, really quickly, you had mentioned the fact that you're an educator. Are you planning on offering any services in the education space? So say someone wanted to get certified as a sommelier, like what does that look like? And is that something you thought of adding into your business model?
It's interesting you say that, Kenya, because there is definitely room for that right now. There are 2 main certifying bodies in wine education. It's the Wine and Spirits Education Trust, which is the school that I was a part of. Very old school based in London, lots of stodgy people. And then you also have the Court of Master Sommeliers, which is, if you've seen the movie Somm on Netflix, that's sort of the origin of that group. Same idea, London based, kind of old school. They're also under major fire and criticism for issues around sexual harassment, racial disparity in the organization and the board. So yes, there is a space because you have these two groups, and we're sort of our hands are tied that we have to go to one of those certifying bodies. So there is space for younger, diverse, more dynamic voices in this industry, especially on the certifying and education side.
So do you still like wine?
That's a great question. And it's funny, I always tell people I taste a lot of wine. I don't drink a lot of wine. When I first got started, yes, every wine you have to taste, you get samples and you're like, wow. And then you find yourself drinking the wine every night. And then you realize that that's not a great idea. So I taste a lot of wine. I don't drink a lot of wine. I use a Corvin system, which is it allows me to actually tap into a bottle of wine without opening it. So it's like a syringe that goes in the wine. So I can just taste what I need, but I'm not guzzling glasses of wine every night, which would not be good.
Okay, we're running out of time, Brianna, but it has been absolutely marvelous speaking with you. You've got a great thing going. Love your personality. I think having you at one of our parties would be so totally
Will
fun.
be
Well,
so
well,
totally
yes.
fun. We are doing
That would be
this.
great.
So welcome and how can people get in touch with you before
Right.
we sign off here?
Of course, you can find me at briannecohen.com, and on all the social media channels, my handle is Sommspirations, wine inspirations from a
That's a
sommelier.
very clever name. You should trademark that if you
Right.
haven't.
And Brianne is spelled BRIANNE COHEN, BrianneCohen.com. And I assume you're on LinkedIn too.
Correct.
All right. Well, great. Well, we'll be right back with more Passage to Profit right after this message.